your transformation from the dogme credo
to this
interests me, because I'm very interested in transparency in film, and when it's fiction, it just needs to be transparent that that's what it is, because a lot of people are confusing right now things that they see on film with things that they can expect or do in life.
Exactly.
So.
And they confuse biopics to be history lessons, whereas they're just fantasies, and so forth. Yes. Well, dogma. It's interesting to bring that up now, obviously, because this is very, very far from dogma. It's almost a contradiction to dogma, and yet not. Dogma was an effort to undress movies, to make it as truthful as possible, as naked as possible, and so we did, by all means. Yet it's still fiction. Then it became fashion overnight in some victorious moment in Cannes in '98. And I thought from that moment it was no longer as pure and as much a riot against conventions. It became a convention itself. So making this film and The Hunt, I had to find the purity in a different way, within the context of that material and within the context of today. Let's imagine I did The Hunt as a dogma film. It would have looked like an old-fashioned stylistic attempt to something. Whereas back in '98 it looked pure. So times are changing, but I'm constantly looking for the same thing, a sense of purity. And that's what I did with this film as well. You can call it transparency, but I call it purity. I wanted to get away from the sense of period drama and get under the skin of these characters and the landscapes. We shot on film, we shot on location. I rehearsed a lot and tried to sort of capture the richness of these characters, and yet still I had a flavor for the old Hollywood 50s movies and Technicolor and Gone with the Wind and The Sweep.
How is this story relevant for today? I mean, you mentioned that you want to make it of contemporary concern. What issues are presented in the film that make it of contemporary concern, and how did you elevate those? And what, according to you, is today's madding crowd?
Well, we're in the middle of it, I guess. I find that Thomas Hardy's portrait of a woman, I'm a man, regarding this portrait, it seems incredibly rich and visionary. It's 140 years old, and yet it still captures, I guess, some of the complexities of being a modern woman. And maybe time haven't changed much for being a woman. I found it moving when I read this conflict and this inner conflict about wanting to be independent and strong, and yet still having this urge to devote to a man. I thought that's a painful conflict, and I see that around me in my own society of Denmark, and I actually see an increasing problem with devoting. It's a virtue that is vanishing. It's being misplaced with weakness for the females, the ability to devote. And I found that moving. And I have done films very full of testosterone before. And I thought, well, this is about time for me to explore the other gender and the complexity of it. I don't find it feministic, because I find feminism is a political debate, very necessary of today. It's more an X-ray of a woman, I guess, without being a statement, and to that degree even more transparent. There's not an agenda. I don't have an agenda either, other than exploration of the other sex. Possibly I have a small agenda, which is remember that virtue of devoting.
In that regard, this is a film that is unusual in that it has a female character in the center of it with three men sort of swirling around
Yeah.
her. It's usually the other way around.
Yes.
And yet she, faced with all of that possibility and all of the dilemma of dealing with the three suitors, you see devotion as being a key quality that she represents, the ability to devote. Do you think that there are equivalent opportunities for men in cinema to explore that quality of devotion? What would they be?
Great question. I hope so. I hope there is, and I find it. I had this conversation with my dad, who's a film critic, by the way, and he said, "I have to remind you, my son, that it's equally important for us men to devote," and obviously it is. For some reason, I find the demands to a woman more oppressive somehow. We're demanding a lot of you. We're demanding strength, sexiness, independence, careerism, and devotedness. And this conglomerate that seems to be sometimes unbearable. Is that right to say? Let me get your question again. I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
Well, whether I guess it would even be to point to specifics in cinema that you've seen where
men with three suitors.
Yeah, men need to be. The point of the film is devotion in the man.
Kramer versus Kramer. It's about devotion, and it's right down here. Mm-hmm. I just thought of it because I spotted the location where he meets his son and the devotion to a child in this case.
I suppose the hunt is in a way as well, because he is very devoted to that little girl in not in a sexual way, but in a a very pure way. So
he's very devoted to that girl, and yes, you're right. I don't know what to add to that.
No, but so then this is a big concern of yours in cinema, I would imagine. A thematic
in life,
concern.
I guess.
In life, yeah.
I find other virtues of this interesting as well. I think also there's an element of being spoiled. That she has three suitors. She kind of enjoys that. Obviously, and that I find very human. And I laugh and smile when I identify with that. Because who wouldn't in this situation? And so it's not only about devotedness. It's this character of Bathsheba is very rich and complex and put together of many pieces. And there's this journey of being a free-spirited, giggly, strong girl into becoming a more concerned woman. And so there's so much in it other than devotedness.
Getting back to a question that I posed previously, what is today's madding crowd?
First of all, it's expanding. I guess it's civilization, and that now includes media platforms, gossiping. I think The Hunt is about a man being strangled by the madding crowd. To me, it's the networky common idea and of what people are. The fact that you can do one step to the left and it can be misunderstood and you can be doomed by the madding crowd is scary to me.
Interesting that Carey Mulligan said exactly the same thing about what the madding crowd is.
Did she?
She did exactly. She said exactly. On the subject of transparency and the need for truth in filmmaking. How do you feel about the application of narrative storytelling techniques in documentary film, which represents itself as truthful and transparent?
Those of the documentaries that I've watched lately has been very full of tendencies, shamelessly. The objectivity is gone. My dad is a journalist, and I'm born and raised to hear about objectivity and exploration and not self-imposement. And you have a very good example here, an American, Mr. Moore, who does that shamelessly, and it has turned documentary into a pop culture, which has an advantage to it, which makes it strong in the commercial sense, which it needed, but has weakened it as a genre to a great extent.
Michael Moore's stretching and putting himself into his films, however, is transparent.
It's transparent, but very full of tendencies.
For trends, yeah, it's trendy. But there's even more. For example, how do you feel?
It's incredibly manipulative.
I see.
But it's my 16-year-old daughter is able to see it, so it's quite harmless to a degree with him, and entertaining.
Do you think it's possible?
I'm afraid of being banal here, but I think there's a tendency to not listen. People talk, but they don't listen. Even in documentaries, you have to turn the camera the other way, and there's a lot of self-occupation in both documentaries and the way of making movies.
It's interesting because I think, and getting back to Far From the Madding Crowd, I think that one of Carey Mulligan's really strongest attributes, and she's fabulous, she's a fabulous actress, but one of her strongest attributes is that she listens so very well.
Which is on page 1 of the Actor book, if there is such a book, but everybody forgets all the time. She doesn't. She's a very, very trained British actor, and she knows that from listening she'll get in there in the moment, and it'll be transparent, it'll be truthful. An actor like Sheen, Matthias Schoenaerts, again, it's the same thing.
Do you think that it's possible for there to be a film, I mean, coming from the dogme tradition and now here and having spoken about documentaries and what's happening with them, do you think that it's possible for there to be made a film that is not manipulative?
Well, no. In the essence of what we do manipulate. We take choices for the audience. We pick and choose what's in and what's out. But you can still have an ambition of making it transparent and making it the audience's own film. See, when I make a movie like The Hunt, so here's the movie, but the work I do is the whole movie around it. It's like, where do they come from? What do they hide from? What do they dream of? What's above them? What's beneath them? And what's after this? And I'm trying to be. I'm trying to create a real life around these people, so that it rings as life, not just a mathematical row of emotions. Do you understand what I mean?
I do.
And that life has to reflect real life somehow.
What is the impact that you seek for your films to have on audiences or on society in general?
The biggest virtue is for it to be slices of life that people bring with them and that they can't get rid of, so that it becomes part of our collective memory and conversation and mirroring.
I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very.
Was it very interesting? Very different. I had no automatic answers to this, so that was very nice.
Well, I'm very pleased about that. Thank you very much.
Salsa should be on the way.
Fantastic. You didn't get yours though. You